This next idea is something that is really important to me, and that is choosing your protagonist for your story and how to do it properly. Now, I am not the best at this. This isn't something that I have explored too much, but something that I'm exploring a lot in my current story, Spartans versus Necromancers. And that is because I find the idea of a Spartan being the protagonist very interesting. But I find it kind of derivative and like the easy choice. And the Necromancer being the villain as also another easy choice. Of course, you can make the villain nuanced and interesting, but I do think that following the person who has the more interesting story is the way to go. Now, there of course is argument for the villain to be the most interesting character, and that's what makes the story better. But if we could follow this Necromancer from being abandoned by the Spartans and then becoming the protagonist and making choices that aren't good, aren't bad, but are just morally questionable and kind of a gray area, I think that could be way more interesting than them just being a mustache twirling villain who raises the dead and takes over a city. I think you can make a much better story if we turn this Necromancer into the protagonist. Doesn't mean they're right or that they're justified, but we can at least see why they're making these choices. And seeing how they got their power and what they do with that power, I think could be very, very interesting. And so, when you are trying to choose your protagonist, you need to really take time to think about it. Why is this person the most interesting protagonist? Are they there to be an everyman or a self-insert character that just kind of goes along with the story and eventually becomes reactive and proactive? Are they someone who actually works for this story? Or could they work in a different story? I mean, there are many authors who say that they didn't choose their protagonist or they didn't choose their villain or whoever for this story until later down the road because they just couldn't find the right actor for the story. Brandon Sanderson says that he essentially holds auditions for his characters and he creates the characters before, but then he doesn't add them to the story till later on because he's trying to find the right protagonist for the story. And I find that really interesting. One of the points that I really want to focus on today is thinking outside of the box. When it comes to your protagonist, I think we tend to pick the person who we think is the coolest or the most interesting, but sometimes taking the weaker and not as powerful character is the way to go. Yes, that could be cliche, like taking a farm boy from their farm and they eventually are the chosen one and yada yada yada. But maybe instead of like the hero, you choose the janitor to be the protagonist and they are the eyes of this story. Or, for my example, you take the Necromancer and turn them into the protagonist of this story instead. And, I am leaning towards the Necromancer as the protagonist because I like the idea of following them on this morally gray journey where they are taking vengeance on this group of people who are just throwing away lives, but they may not be doing it in the most, it's definitely effective, but it's not the best way just because, I don't know, killing a whole city just to get revenge, maybe not the best idea, just saying. But your protagonist and your characters don't necessarily reflect your beliefs as a writer. So, yeah. And because necromancy is seen as evil, but it didn't start out that way. And so being able to take this and make some interesting spins on it and kind of give people a better idea of where this actually comes from is something I'm really excited to focus on and to write about. So why are you writing this character's story? And is a story of this character, or is this just a story and then you added this character into it? What connections does this character have to the story? Excuse me. Why are they the one that you're putting in the story to be written about? Does this story happen without the protagonist? If this story goes on and happens without the protagonist, you probably could use a different protagonist or just need to look at it from a different angle. If the story goes on, but the protagonist doesn't do much or change much, then are they really the protagonist, or are they just a vehicle for the audience to see the story? And that's totally fine. There are plenty of stories to do that, and there are stories where that is the point, is just to kind of follow this story along. But is that your story? Is that what you're trying to do? I would say unless you are specifically showing off this world and how interesting it is, you probably want to make your protagonist somebody who actually has impact on the story and actually makes changes and improves things. And so that's what you need to ask yourself is, does this story happen without the protagonist? And the last point I want to focus on today is your protagonist needs to have the potential to grow, needs to have the potential to actually make change in themselves and the world around them. Now, how they grow and how they change, completely up to you. They could grow in a downward spiral, doing bad things. There are plenty of stories that are really great because of that. But there's also stories that are really bad because of that. You really need to decide what is best for this story. Maybe you like this protagonist a lot, but they just don't fit in the story completely, and they need to go somewhere else. So I would say, give this story the protagonist it needs, and give them the potential to grow and improve and really change the world for the better, or for the worse, depending on the story that you're trying to write. I think kind of auditioning your characters is a really interesting way to go. Maybe write some scenes of them doing the magic or the fighting or just a dialogue against a different character. That's something that could really change the dynamic of the story altogether and really make the story work or not. It's something that is really important because the protagonist is the character that your readers will be with for a large chunk of the story. And that's going to be really important to make the story work or not. I'm sure a lot of stories that have failed or not done well, I'm sure they're all fantastic, but maybe they just didn't have the right protagonist or the right direction from the writer to make the story really work. Ideas are really cheap, but execution is everything. And so making sure that you execute things correctly by picking the right characters, the right style, the right era is really important. And so when you're choosing your protagonist, really decide if they work for the story or if the story works for them. I'm sure they're a great character, but maybe they deserve to be somewhere else and in a different story. But definitely shop around and find out what works for your story and for what works for your characters. Find out if the dynamic, the connection, all these things work between your characters, because it's really going to change how your story flows, how it works, and where it goes. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, definitely like it. Comment how you choose your protagonists, or if you feel like you could make a different protagonist for your story. It may feel like you're kind of stepping back and kind of losing progress, but really you're not. You're really just saving yourself time in the future. And yeah, subscribe to this channel because I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I would really appreciate your support. You can follow me and subscribe to my Patreon down below. That is where I will share a lot of the initial ideas and writing, and where you can be involved and even change the story that I'm writing. And yeah, it's only $5 a month, and I would really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.